Here I am, like this independent, like general manager, have my stuff together, have my own house. Like I like feel like I've achieved a lot.
And
okay.
You're cursing like a sailor.
I just cussed, and he was like, "You know, that's not very ladylike." And I was like, "Okay." And then then he was like, "You know, cursing is like when you're cussing is a sign of not being intelligent." And I was like, "Oh no, it's not." Like I remember, like
it's actually not true.
I literally looked it up, and I was like, "No, it's a sign of being smart."
1, 2, 3, go.
Jennifer Hardy, har har.
Believe it or not,
Welcome to the Lawyer Dana Show.
the Lawyer Dana podcast.
Wow, we have a lot to talk about.
And we're going to do it right after this.
Welcome to the Lawyer Dana podcast.
Very young mother tries to tell joke.
Tries.
Mom who doesn't use any profanity. Tries to tell.
Oh my gosh, I use profanity.
You do?
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm trying to portray an image here.
I wish I did.
Don't tell the people that you're a real person.
When I worked in
Don't
the
be a real
restaurant,
person.
one time.
Oh, you read?
Yeah.
Right.
And
They
one
already knew
time
that.
my chef
Anybody
was
who
like,
ever worked at a restaurant knew, but most people don't work in a restaurant. So I had a.
whenever
worked
I
in a
would
restaurant.
cuss, people would go, "Oh," and I would laugh and be like, "What?" And they're like, "You cussed?"
I was in.
And I was like, have you been dead this whole time? Like, I cuss all the time. They're like, I just never hurt you. Yeah. And then one time my chef, I was cussing so much one time because I was super mad about something, and I was in his office and I was like, boom, 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 boom. And then he goes, "Jen, you know, and like probably in the last 10 seconds, you said the F word, like probably 20 times in
fair,
in
right?
the sentence.
That's the F word, is fair.
And I was just laughing. Yeah.
So when I was in law school, I took a class like employment discrimination class, and the professor had represented a client. Like he was like made law or something that we were, and he was in the book, and it was his case. And apparently some employee of some company said something, and he wouldn't repeat it to us. And I'm sitting here going, I work in the restaurant industry. Like, tell me, I bet like every day I hear everything worse than that. Like I probably have an hour of material per day that's probably worse than that. And he would never say.
Well, it's funny.
Right.
No, we cuss a lot in the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
And you don't mean to. I mean, honestly, it becomes like your day-to-day language. It's not like you're like wanting to cuss. It just becomes it.
Daniel and I had a professor together in a class.
Well, when I met,
And he was a former Marine. Oh, I need to hear this. Go ahead. My story can wait.
When me and Daniel got back together after like 10 years of being broke up.
This was after law school.
Yeah.
Because we went to law school 22 years ago.
Daniel was already practicing law.
And you're only married for 12, so like it was 10 years.
Yeah. So we broke up, and we were broke up for 10 years. Got back together, we started talking again after 10 years and everything. And you know, he hadn't been around me in like 5 years of that. Like we had not even.
And you're in the restaurant industry.
Yeah. Well, and I had been in the restaurant industry prior to that. Like he.
I thought you were getting ready to tell me about how Daniel picked up cursing from our professor who was a former Marine. We were sitting at one meeting, and this is the classic. He goes, this guy named Clark was in our, and we were talking about something, and I forget how we got on the topic, but he goes, my 80-year-old grandmother thinks that gay men are gay because they don't want the responsibility of having to have a family. And without missing a beat, Mike goes, hell, I'm gay then. Mike's got 2 kids and a wife. But Mike, like, I, at the time, was trying to like not curse and use profanity or whatever. And within one semester of Mike, like every other word was F, like all of us. It was just so much profanity. It's like we were in the Marines or something. And the only thing that's close to that is the restaurant industry.
Oh yeah. So I remember like we started talking again, and you know, I'm like, here I am, like this independent, like general manager, have my stuff together, have my own house. Like I like feel like I've achieved a lot.
And
Okay.
you're cursing like a sailor?
I just cussed, and he was like, you know, that's not very ladylike. And I was like, okay. And then
Okay.
and then he was like, you know, cursing is like, when you're cussing is a sign of not being intelligent. And I was like, oh no, it's not. Like, I remember, like,
It's not. It's actually not true.
I literally looked it up, and I was like, no, it's a sign of being smart.
Yeah, it is.
And
I don't know if I buy that.
yeah, so
Fair. We're talking about the fair word.
So here's the thing.
Fair.
So,
F word.
Working in the restaurant industry, I cussed a lot, okay? But then, like, if I got pregnant and I had a baby and I was away from it and I was on maternity leave, this other side of me comes out. I'm like the sweet, soft, I don't cuss, like I'm like homemaker.
Basically who you've been on most of the podcast.
I become this like homemaker personality. Like, not that I have multiple personalities. It's just I change like when I'm not in that dynamic. I think it's stress, and for me, when I'm stressed, it's a trigger. That's how I deal with my stress, is by cussing. So I'm not saying that it's the right thing to do.
There's a lot to.
I don't want my kids doing it, but yeah.
There's a lot of annoyances in the restaurant industry because so many things just go wrong. Like, there's systems of how things are supposed to work.
Well, you want to hear about the 2 incidents that happened to me right before I left the restaurant industry?
I think the restaurant industry is a controlled chaos, but it's very chaotic.
But what pulled me completely wanting to get the heck out of it, I
Okay,
dealt with.
I want to hear this.
I dealt with 2 major guest incidents like right before I left, and it's what changed my decision on why I was like, what am I doing and why am I still doing this? And you know, I went in doing hospitality because I loved it. And I loved people, and I wanted to make differences. And I felt like, you know, I knew I wouldn't be good at being a doctor. And one reason was because I could not deal with watching people lose people.
Oh, yeah.
And that was something that I knew right off the bat. Same thing as being like a vet. I couldn't watch putting animals down. Just something I couldn't handle.
I actually have almost a consistent sense of anxiety because I know that at least within the next 4 years, we're going to lose Dream because she'll be 16. And a Dalmatian, she's 12 now. Summer and I, neither one of us have had a Dalmatian live to like 11 and a half.
Right.
And Dream is 12, and it is like hard for me to do it because maybe she can make it to 15 or 16, but
I know. It's hard.
I hope we film a podcast that week because that's going to be some heavy stuff.
Right. But you know, here's the thing, like, so in my life, thinking of things I wanted to do, I thought about those decisions, like, you know, oh, I couldn't be a pediatrician because this is something I would have to deal with,
I
or
can't
whatever.
do any medical things.
Yeah, so then that kind of got wiped out, and then at one point I wanted to be a lawyer. And that's kind of where I was going in my life. I was like, I went and did business law in high school. I did really well at it. I remember we had a case that I got to do for the first time where I was the defense attorney, and this other kid who ends up becoming an attorney down the road was the prosecutor. I ended up winning.
Did he become a prosecutor, or what kind of attorney did he become?
I don't know what he became. I think he did business.
Okay.
But it's funny because he came into my restaurant with his law firm not very long after that, or long ago, and I saw him and I was like, oh my gosh, because I thought he was a jerk in high school. I mean, he was a jerk. But
How is he now? How is he at dinner?
We did a criminal case, and the criminal case was basically I'm defending this person and making sure that this person gets off. I won. And because all I had to do is create reasonable doubt.
Do you still want to be a lawyer?
Do I still want to be a lawyer?
Yeah, if I could wave a magic wand and poof, you're a lawyer. Would you rather have your job or Daniel's job?
I'd rather have mine.
That's what I think. So I think you won. You've won in life over the guy that had to.
Well,
law school is a 3-year suffering.
It's
not pleasant.
So I never had student loans like Daniel did. I remember I had a student loan and I paid it off within a few months of having it.
A few months?
Yeah, because it wasn't much. It was a few $1,000s and I paid it off.
Still paying life.
Yeah. You know, I stuck to like what I knew I was good at. I figured out my niche. My niche was business. Business was something that I was good at. And so for me, it became restaurants because, like, you know, I got a management job at 21. I got offered $35,000 a year. That's big money.
That's a lot of money at
2002.
Yeah, especially in 2002.
Yeah,
that was good money.
Yeah, and I was like, and then not shortly after that, I was in the 40s, and then I was in the 50s, and then I was in the 60s. So when I became a GM at 26, I was making $60,000 plus bonuses. I was doing pretty damn good. Yeah. And so it was like that's why that was my niche. That was what I needed to go do. That's who I was. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought where I was going with this.
I don't know, but it's fascinating. It's, cursing, I don't know. The fair word.
There was something I was going with this.
While you're thinking of that one of the expressions that you hear family lawyers do when we talk about fair, and I don't use this one a lot, but a lot of other people do, and some of our best mediators use this all the time. They go, the fair is something that happens in downtown Dallas once a year. State fair. But otherwise, there's no such thing as fair here.
No, I think getting back to...
If it was fair, they would get to have a healthy marriage and everything work out. The reason that you got married would be to have security, self-esteem, and love. That's what's fair. And
yeah. No, so with me and Daniel and like our situation, like we got back together like 10 years later and everything, and then got married and had children. You know, looking back on everything, like I could have went the path of law or whatever I wanted to do. I decided not to. I decided that I wanted to make money. I decided that what was important to me was establishing a good income for myself, being able to structure myself and not being worried. I had a different path than most people did. I lived with my mother until I was 30 years old, and I helped my mother all that time. My mom lost her husband. She was a widow.
When you were 14.
15.
15.
Yeah, and she...
So first half of your life you had two parents, and the second half of your life till you're 30, you took care of your mom.
I did. It was
actually, Jennifer, you still take care of your mom.
I do. It was a situation of which, like, at that time in my life, like, my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. So I grew up with a stay-at-home mom. My father worked, owned his own business. My dad did restaurant equipment service for a living. So he would go into
that affected you going into the restaurant industry?
Probably, because my dad sometimes would take me on jobs. And so he'd be fixing the restaurant equipment, and there's funny stories behind all of that. So my dad was like the most outgoing person you ever met in your life, could talk to any stranger. You would sit there and go, Dad, who is that? He's like, I don't know, I'm just talking to him. And he'd have like a 30-minute conversation with a stranger. Like, you'd be like, who is that? I don't know. And I mean, so my dad, like, he'd go work in these restaurants and everybody knew him and everybody loved him. And like this one time he's working on some equipment and the guy walks into the walk-in. My dad's in there eating an avocado and stuff, and the guy goes, oh, sorry, Bobby, I didn't know you were on lunch. But that was my dad. He was just like that. So when he passed away, like our situation wasn't
great. How did he pass away?
So he went in for open heart surgery and didn't make it. Yeah. So he, that was it was a very hard, traumatizing death.
I'm sure.
Because when he got out of it, he wasn't doing well. And then like my last memories, like my dad was purple. So it was not something anybody should go through, but especially when you're young and seeing that, it was really difficult.
How old was
he? He was 53. Yeah.
Wow.
No, you don't.
I think 50 is the new 20. I think 50 is 20 with money. If you did it right.
So the story behind my dad was this. My dad had went to the doctor. Doctor says, if I was as healthy as you are, he was about 30 years old, I live to be 100. My dad's at a job, gets hit in the head with a hammer.
Your dad gets hit in the head with a hammer?
Yeah, 6 months after he went to the doctor.
Wait.
He's on a service call, working. I don't know what happened. Something happened.
Where did the heart attack and like how did
he didn't have a heart attack?
Bypass. Why did he have to have a bypass? Because he got hit in the head?
No. So he was 30 when this happened. 6 months after he was, went to the doctor at 30 years old.
Yeah.
He gets hit in the head, gets taken to the hospital. Yikes. Blood pressure's through the roof, and they're like, your kidneys are failing. Like 6 months after he just went to the doctor.
What?
So the belief is, because he was always my dad was in Parkland, and Parkland has like materials written about my dad's situation. They never could pinpoint how my dad had kidney failure. The only thing they could believe that caused it was romantic fever as a child. There's never been a diagnosis of him having romantic fever, but he does remember having a very high fever at a young age for a couple of weeks, and that they had to put like paper on the windows because the sun was affecting him. So when he describes this to the doctors, they're like, I believe you have romantic fever as a child that went untreated, and it caused kidney failure.
Doesn't sound very romantic.
No, not at all. So he went through 3 kidney transplants, and because of all that and being on dialysis for 7 years of his life, it caused a lot of strain in his heart, which again, he gets kidney transplant when I was in 1st grade. Go 3rd grade, my dad's having trouble breathing.
Wow.
Come to find out, it's heart issues. And then he just prolonged it because he was scared. Because like he would say, kidney, you can have a machine to support you. With your heart, you have one heart.
Yeah.
And so he prolonged it. My freshman year of high school, he starts having lots of problems. So he's in and out of the hospital, in and out of the hospital. My last day of school, my freshman year, he goes into the hospital and he never came back home.
Wow. Sorry.
So, it's okay. But yeah, it's, so those are, with my dad, he was a big influence in my life, but it also made me like going through the hard times that we went through. Because in my early childhood, things were always wonderful and like got a lot. Dad always had big Christmases. He always did a lot for us. Towards the end, right before my dad had died, things got really hard and really difficult, and finances weren't great. And I remember those things. And
it's from all the medical and
right.
being able to work.
And when he did pass away, we weren't able to have a lot of life insurance because of his medical condition.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then him owning his own business, there's expenses behind that. So my mom had to clean out the business stuff.
And depending on how he paid himself, if he just took, like if he didn't pay himself wages, then he didn't pay into Social Security, and then Social Security benefits even would be lower.
He did though.
He did? Okay, good.
Yeah, because my mom does get Social Security benefits for him.
Okay.
But here's the deal.
Good, then all this money that we're paying in,
yeah,
your mom gets a tiny little.
She gets a tiny bit.
Out of all the money that we pay in to the government. Yeah. You should see the checks that the firm writes to the government.
Oh, I believe it. And
the government basically owns 30% of our companies.
Well, and my parents' situation is a huge reason why people need to make sure they have stuff in order. Oh, yeah. Because, I was, the reason why I went the route I went with my life is because I didn't want to have this, I wanted that security in my life. I needed that security. I needed to be feeling protected. I needed to have a job that I was going to be okay. And I've been that way my whole life. And even if my husband said, Jennifer, you don't have to work, you could just stay home, I couldn't do it because I would be having a security issue because of what I watched my mom go through. My mom stayed home, then had to go back to work. Yep. She was a hairdresser.
And then you don't have a good established career.
No, she didn't. She had to rebuild a clientele up that put her in a situation that it was really hard and really trying.
I don't think you would want to just not.
No, I don't think I have it.
Have anything to do.
Yeah, I don't have it in me. Like I have to feel a sense of success or a sense of accomplishment, it has to happen for me. If I don't have that, I'm no good.
I thought so. I mean, yeah, you have to have a purpose. I think human beings are created to do things. If you sit there with just nothing to do, and I mean, you're just wasting your time in life. There's things that, there's growth that you go through, and you can't just sit and do nothing.
Right.
Because then you're either growing or you're shrinking.
Right.
And
well, the biggest thing I can say out of all that is making sure that you've got game plans in place, and
it's called. That's why we have estate planning as part of the firm.
Right.
Because so many of our clients, we started out in family law, and then so many of our clients needed estate planning, and Daniel and I learned how to do all that in law school, and I wrote my big 200 or 300 page paper on advanced estate planning, and went into that. I've just seen so much pain in that. What we realize is, well, as a family law firm, our firm really is about people coming into the family and people going out of the family.
Right.
And people going out of the family is tough, because it's death and divorce. And I would love to prevent divorces, but I don't think we can prevent divorces from existing. Like, we do stop a lot of divorces from happening, and heal a lot of divorces and turn them into healthy marriages, but we cannot stop death.
Right.
And everybody, if you're born, if you can hear my voice, you are going to die at some point, and you should have a plan, because it's a nightmare when you leave behind people and pets and things that you love, especially the people and the pets. If there's anybody that you love in this world, if you don't have an estate plan, you're really screwing them over. You're really hurting them. You're making it very difficult on them. They're already grieving you, and then you're going to make it worse and give them, you're handing them a bunch of problems that if you just would have taken care of that ahead of time, you wouldn't be burdening and cursing them with that. As you could be blessing them with, oh wow, they took care of all this, and great, and we can have this sense of peace. And it's just so so painful when you don't have that and something happens.
Right.
And it's guaranteed. It's happening to all of us. You're going to become incapacitated, and you're going to pass away. And that can and the worst is that's a long distance.
Right.
A lot of people think that it's going to happen immediately, and they're like, oh, I just need a will. Yeah, not really, because if you're incapacitated and you're alive for any length of time, your will only goes into effect over here. That means you've left all of this unplanned. That's actually more important. Right. Because the stuff from incapacity to death only deals with who gets your stuff after you pass away, which is really the least important. Who takes care of your kids and your pets is the most important, and then who takes care of your money, and who takes care of you before you've passed away after you're incapacitated.
Well, and also if you have a parent or a loved one, ask those questions. Make sure they have those things in place. Yep. And that is something that, like, I had to recognize the hard way with my own mom. Her will is from when her and my dad were alive. So it's so out of date. And then, you know.
But I don't think your mom now, I hope, we can cut this if we shouldn't share this, but is she capable of executing a new will now? Because I think not, right?
I don't. I'm going to try. We're going to try. The thing is, my mom doesn't have assets.
Yeah, you've already got all the stuff in place that you need.
It's more the power of attorney to make medical decisions.
So your mom actually probably is a good example of somebody who doesn't need a will at all. No. Because what we believe her will would be is what happens under the default laws of the state of Texas. The default laws of the state of Texas, or with the Texas legislature, is their best case, hopefully and likely, guess of what's going to hurt the most people the least. And there sure are some people where that's bad. And it doesn't work out right, and there's all kinds of problems. I mean, some of it can actually result in people's premature death, that they don't get the care and they run out of money, or there's problems that happen. delays with certain things that can happen that don't need to be delayed, like financing for medical procedures or all kinds of complications, just things you never even would think of or predict that if we just had this, even though we didn't anticipate this exact problem, this anticipates that there will be problems, and this was a tool that would have scooped up that problem and prevented even that problem from happening. And you need all these things. Like you need an emergency ID card, you need emergency instructions, you need powers of attorney for medical purposes, you need power of attorney for financial purposes, you need to designate who your beneficiaries are, you need to put some of your property in trust for some people. The more assets and things that you have, the more that you need more advanced tools for certain things. And even, you know, for me as a fellow citizen, I suppose I appreciate when other people mess up and give tons more money to the government than they needed to do. I mean, but I'm sort of, for anybody that I know, I would go, hey, you need to pay your taxes, but you don't need to leave them a tip.
Right.
And why did you do this that causes your own kids to not get some of your property, and you gave it to the government instead of giving it to your kids? And I mean, I'm not that big of a fan that the government uses our money right.
Right.
Right? And so I'd rather normal people have it, especially if it's anybody that I know, or especially if it's been a client and their families, because our clients and their families we take on as if they were our own family.
Right. Exactly.
Except we're not too emotionally attached to where we can make good decisions, as opposed with our own family, where it's hard to even be objective with them.
Right.
I mean, and we have a huge amount of compassion and caring for our clients and their families, and it is our job to be their not irrationally, emotionally caught up and attached advisors, because we advise them and understand and evaluate their situation. And it's our job twofold. One, advise them and tell them what actions they should take.
Right.
And then if they have an issue, then we become their advocate. That's their army, their general, their fighter, and we make things happen for them. We become the person that does it for them, or we advise them what they should do and then go out. So there's advocate and advisor hats, and they're both extremely important.
Yep. Which is very, very important.
So, I don't think we had enough comedy in this episode,
No.
Jennifer.
Rick was going to tell us story of
I've got some comedy for you. I've got some comedy for you. So in college, my buddy gets married. College, I'm sure your brother gets married.
Okay.
And he was very smart with his money, even in college. He had money. Family came from, he had money.
Yeah.
His wife to be in debt up the wazoo. She went to be a nurse, in debt, just.
I can guess where this might be going.
No. So, prenup. He insists she's fine. Two things in the prenup that I think are the greatest things in the history are. He has 100% control of all finances.
Okay.
Until her student loan debts are paid off. Because she's back with money.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad idea.
Yeah.
Nope, second one's where we're gonna get you. Two, he can have sex whenever he wants and she can't say no.
Oh my God.
So that's funny. That's a common thing. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode of the Lawyer Dana Show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Like and subscribe and catch that episode. We're picking this up right now.
The Lawyer Dana Podcast.